Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Brokeback Mountain. Just to get right into it, what is the main point? I think the point of Brokeback Mountain is to kind of show the struggles of a gay relationship in a homophobic society where I think in particular it's very internalized for a character like Ennis. I think there's a lot of films where we really are focusing more on the romance, so I think this one does a very good job of focusing on how things outside of their control can really limit what their romance is, while still showing a lot of beauty of that romance. It's just through a lot more indirect kind of lens. It also is really unique in showing a lifetime, so it really goes through, at least from Jack beginning to end, to the point where he unfortunately gets murdered. But I think the point of the movie is really to show very comprehensively what it is like to live as a gay man in this kind of very harsh homophobic society, which is not something that a lot of films have done, especially with in such like a comprehensive way. The class component I would want to focus on is probably mise en scène. I think the use of space in this movie was really cool. I think it has a lot of open spaces, obviously in like Brokeback and everything, and I think those spaces are specifically meant to signify kind of the openness of their relationship when they're out in this mountain where they can be free and with each other properly. So we see this kind of be limited when they go back home and they're in these very kind of dull and like cramped homes. I think it's a very clear contrast where when they are able to be open, there is a quite literal open sense to it, and when they need to be closed, there's a quite literal closed sense to it. And I think that final scene where we see Ennis opening the door to see Jack's clothes and everything hanging on the wall, I think it kind of shows that even though maybe he's not fully open, he's a lot more accepting of his identity, and he kind of is like cherishing it in some level now, where he will open it and kind of recognize this is who he is, this is who his love was, even if he does have to ultimately close that door and go back into what his life is. And at this point, it's not a life where he can be openly out within. The aesthetic element, I think kind of in line with space, would probably be color. I'd want to focus on that. I think the movie is kind of desaturated overall, which kind of fits with the point, in my opinion, of it not really glorifying and hyper-romanticizing what this is and letting it be very real and grounded. But I do think that the open spaces have a very colorful, like kind of natural greens and blues in the sky and everything, in the water. These are all really kind of beautiful and very colorful, and I think when they get back home, there's almost exclusively like whites and tans and grays, and especially in the last scene where a house is entirely gray that Jack's parents lived within, and it kind of just shows how, I don't know, only when they're with each other can they really kind of even start to see the colors of the world and kind of feel like proper people. And I think also it's interesting that Jack's world and kind of where he was tended to have a little bit more color, like his wife, and he'd wear more blues and there's a lot of reds, like stuff like that. I think that kind of goes to show that he not only experienced success, but he kind of was a lot more openly out, even though obviously not fully out. He kind of accepted his identity, and I think that led to this like kind of influx of color in his life. So in terms of construction, I think the movie was really well constructed. Again, I think the element of trying to move across all these time periods is a bold move. I think it works really well because it goes to show how these two people can affect everybody else in their lives. So you can see how they affect their parents, how they can affect their children, how they affect their wives, how they affect people they just kind of had flings with, stuff like that. So I think the construction of the movie goes really well to accomplish the goal of showing how living in this kind of challenging lifestyle goes to, affect not only the two people, obviously, but everyone around them. So I think it's a very effective way to show off what the movie, I think what the movie is trying to do. And finally, what do I like? I think above all else, I really like how believable this film is. It feels like a movie that represents its characters really well, I guess. From Ennis to Jack and every person in their life, everybody feels real and feels like they are sympathetic to what is happening, even if it's like annoying them or even if it is very hard for them to deal with, like in the case of Jack's wife, something like that. So I think it's very thematically clear, and it doesn't have to like sacrifice characterization to do that. And I also think it's the best film I've seen that shows off kind of the struggles of internalized homophobia, because I think Ennis is a super believable character because there are people who do struggle to show any sort of emotion, and having to deal with their own internalized homophobia while also dealing with showing some version of emotion, while also dealing with being ambitious, is a very, very challenging thing for that type of character. And that was felt where he doesn't need to say every single line, he doesn't need to be very verbal. You can kind of just tell that he's feeling what he's feeling. So I thought it was a great film. And yeah, that's about it.